Well, our top focus at this hour, another exit from Team Trump, but a very different one from the previous unceremonious exits. Nikki Haley is stepping down as the United States ambassador to the United Nations. She will be leaving her office in New York by the end of this year. Nikki Haley, who has been the governor of South Carolina, was appointed as the ambassador weeks after Trump won the 2016 elections. She is the daughter of Indian immigrants and was a sharp critic of Donald Trump during the 2016 election campaign. Back in April, Nikki Haley clashed with the White House when she prematurely announced a new round of sanctions against Russia at the UN. At one point, she had even suggested that Trump's rhetoric could trigger a world war. But for now, it seems like all is well at the White House, putting speculation to rest. Nikki Haley confirmed that she will not challenge Trump in the 2020 presidential elections.
For all of you that are going to ask about 2020, no, I'm not running for 2020. I can promise you what I'll be doing is campaigning for this one. So I look forward to supporting the president in the next election.
Meanwhile, while President Trump was all praise as well for Nikki Haley, very unlike all the others who have left his team.
Nikki Haley, ambassador to the United Nations, has been very special to me. She's done an incredible job. She's a fantastic person, very importantly, but she also is somebody that gets it. She has been at the United Nations from the beginning with us, right from the beginning, and worked with us on the campaign. It's been really a long time, very intense. She told me probably 6 months ago, she said, you know, maybe at the end of the year, at the end of a 2-year period, but at the end of the year, I want to take a little time off. I want to take a little break.
All right, and joining us now is Jonathan Watchell, former spokesperson for Nikki Haley, who is joining us live from New York. Jonathan, thanks very much for joining us this evening. Now, how would you assess Nikki Haley's term as, the U.S. envoy to the United Nations? She had some moments where she obviously did not agree with the Trump administration, but all in all, she seemed like somebody who defended Donald Trump and his administration throughout.
She definitely has had a big impact here at the United Nations. There's a sense of loss among some diplomats. Really grew to appreciate her participation in Security Council meetings. She was a strong voice when she was in the room in closed consultations and certainly in open session as the world got to see in her speeches and strong positions on things that she had a heavy conviction about, including the atrocities in Syria, the chemical weapons attacks, Russian blocking of Security Council resolutions, and of course in dealing with North Korea and trying to navigate through difficult conversations and negotiations with Russia and China, the two other heavyweights on the Security Council, along with France and England, of course, Britain, of course, but nonetheless capable of blocking measures with vetoes, and managed to get these robust sanctions against North Korea through, despite a lot of challenges and pushback. Now, of course, she's a controversial figure, too, in that she supported the president and his position on climate change, which, of course, is a big issue here at the United Nations and worldwide, and taking a position to withdraw from the climate accord. And on a variety of other issues as well.
Yes.
Quite controversial.
Yes, absolutely, including, of course, Israel shifting, the U.S. shifting its embassy, of course, to Jerusalem. But having said that, there's a lot of speculation, of course, about why she has left and the timing of when she's left. Why do you think that she's quit from this position?
Ultimately, if you're going to be stepping down from a position, it's a personal thing. And sometimes you don't have all the answers, but you have a hunch that it's the right thing to do for a variety of reasons. In her case, I was not surprised when she decided to step down. In fact, I would have expected her to have tenured her resignation a few months ago. She did her time here. She put in and left an impact on the way things are conducted here. She was a strong voice at the UN. and will be actually for the next couple of months as she transitions out and a new ambassador is selected and brought in, and there'll be a handover. It could be a number of factors always. One is you're up here in New York. You're doing your thing. You're on the National Security Council, of course, down in D.C., but you're isolated from the general pack unless you're able to get down there. And, it's a very competitive field in trying to get the president's ear. You're working with a relatively new Secretary of State and a national security advisor for Trump, John Bolton, who was an ambassador to the UN himself, a very strong individual when it comes to foreign policy, well read in, very, very strident in his positions, many of which, of course, dovetail with what the president's beliefs are. So Nikki Haley had to decide in terms of her political future, certainly,
yes,
what sitting in New York would mean long term, and there are other options available to her,
right,
and seems to be the most expedient thing for her.
Right. But Jonathan, as somebody who has walked with her, her exit, of course, has been very different from very many others in the Trump administration, like, Rex Tillerson, and the list is very long. To many, it looks like the perfect political launch. She's got the stature, she's got the recognition, and she's also got the appreciation of the president himself.
That's right. She's leaving on a high, as they like to say in the world. She's popular within certainly the president's direct circles. She's left an impact here. She spent a considerable amount of time, not as long as a career diplomat would, of course, in a position like this, but as far as a politician is concerned, and that is who she is. As a politician, she's spent enough time here to dot the I and cross the T in terms of getting exposure to foreign policy and the way the world works to a degree, and some of the serious issues before the world and wars and other crises, and had to roll up her sleeves and deal with them. So that's a tremendous experience to have on top of her experience on dealing with civil matters and state matters as a governor and as a legislator down in South Carolina. So she's managed to broaden her resume, and certainly has every opportunity to jump back into the game politically. Now, it's one thing to say in 2020, I'm not going to run. But as you know, politics is a fast-moving current, and things can change very rapidly, and circumstances can develop into a way in which you can say one thing at one point, and then come closer to 2020, it actually is time for her to jump back in.
Right. Jonathan, I was just getting to that, in fact, that she said very, vociferously that I'm going to be pitching for this one, sitting next to Donald Trump for 2020, but much can change in the next 2 years, of course. And would you be putting your money on the fact that she could very well be in the race? And if she's not, of course, Donald Trump has hinted at the possibility of Ivanka Trump making a very good UN ambassador, saying she would be a dynamite there at the UN. Your thoughts on that?
Of course, a father's going to give complimentary words and praise to his daughter, and Ivanka is an interesting figure, and perfectly capable of taking on challenging projects. But I have to say, in terms of the top tier in selection, there are other names that come up. Among them is Adina Powell, who served on the NSC, is up in New York, actually, and was spotted because of Nikki Haley, who tweeted out a picture of them together on a boat the other day. So obviously there have been some conversations about the world, and one would surmise conversations dealing with the job of UN ambassador. And you have Rick Grenell, who's currently the ambassador in Germany for the president, a fellow who spent, I think, close to 8, if not more, years working at the U.S. mission to the United Nations as Director of Communications and spokesperson, has a very close relationship with the president, and at one point was very much wanting to get the job as U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. And there are other players as well. So, the president's going to have a short list, of course, of people who could fill the role. And we'll have to see who he decides. And then, of course, whoever he chooses needs to go through the hearings and process of the Senate to get clearance to be able to come and actually serve up here.
Right, absolutely. And of course, Ms. Powell's name is already doing the rounds. And my final question to you, Jonathan, is somebody who's worked with Nikki Haley closely. I mean, she's, been seen as a hawk. She's seen as somebody who, could be a favorite with the Republicans, and also, of course, been a very effective UN envoy and somebody who's actually really pushed the America First policy. So do you think that she would be a viable contender for a presidential election?
Certainly, she's a viable contender within the Republican Party. She's been praised for her presence here at the UN and obviously the way that she's handled some of the deeply controversial and heartbreaking controversies that have hit South Carolina, including the flag issue and the shootings. She stands very strong there. I can't say that the Democratic Party and anybody left of center in this country would really appreciate who she is, because at the end of the day, she has backed policies of President Trump that have been largely unpopular among Democrats, from pulling out of the Iran nuclear deal to pulling out of the climate accord, and other positions that really don't sit well with the Democrats. So she has a big appeal, but whether she has the, if she has the appeal for widespread countrywide support, that is not a given.
Right, Jonathan Waschel, thanks very much indeed for joining us with your thoughts about Nikki Haley stepping down and her possibilities for 2020. Thanks very much indeed for that.